This beautiful monstrosity is Jello dentures in a gelatin mold.
Let's see what's cooking. It's time for Yo-Yo Max 12.
Hello everyone, first thing we're going to do is make the dentures. So starting off with a quarter cup of cold water, you're going to sprinkle 1.5 envelopes of clear unflavored gelatin on top of it. Just let it sit until it absorbs the water, and then add half a cup of boiling water. Give that a little stir until it becomes clear again and the gelatin is dissolved. Then pour in 1/4 cup of sweetened condensed milk. Give that a stir, you'll get like a white milky liquid, and that's going to be used for the teeth in our denture molds. Just set that aside and let it cool. Now we're going to make the gums that go with our dentures. So that is half a cup of cold water. We're going to add 1 package of unsweetened gelatin. Let it sit until it absorbs the water. Add in half a cup of boiling water. Give that a stir until it's dissolved, and then add in a package of strawberry or cherry or raspberry gelatin, something red. And then you're going to add in some sweetened condensed milk. Now the recipe that I based this on said to use a 1/4 cup of sweetened condensed milk, give or take. However, when I stirred this around with a 1/4 cup or a little less than a 1/4 cup, I realized that the color was still way too red for dentures. For the gums, you want them to be like a light pink. So I continued to add sweetened condensed milk until I ended up adding the entire can, pretty much. And it still wasn't quite light enough pink, but it was close. Now what I had in the house was some white food color. It's actually white gel paste food color, and I added that and it actually lightened it up quite quickly, and I ended up with a pink I thought was something that you would find on a set of dentures. And then you set that aside and let that cool. And now it's time to make our dentures. This is a denture mold. It's actually an ice cube tray is what it is. I bought it off of Amazon. You just have to go on Amazon and just put denture mold and it pops right up. They weren't that expensive. I bought 2 of them to help make this process go a little bit faster. I sprayed it with cooking spray. Make sure you get all the nooks and crannies with cooking spray. And then I just kind of dabbed it with a paper towel just to get any places that might have had pooled oil, but you still want a nice coating on inside your mold. Then you're going to add the white into the little tooth cavities. Now I'm using a plastic syringe. This particular one is actually from the dollar store. I came with in a set of 6. They're actually for shooters for a Halloween party, but it was perfect for filling in these little tiny spaces. It says poison on it. They're really cute for Halloween. So I found that one of the best ways to do this was to fill up the little teeth. So put some on one end, and then all you have to do is kind of tilt your mold a little bit and it'll fill in the rest of the empty cavities. You'll see here when I do that right now. Just give it a little tilt. Now you want to make sure that you don't put too much white, because the white's going to creep onto the palate part of the mold and you're going to get a big white band instead of nice individual white teeth. And once you're done filling in the teeth, you're going to put this in the refrigerator and let it sit until the white part is set. Won't take very long, maybe 15-20 minutes. And then you're going to take the cooled pink part, make sure that liquid is cool to room temperature, otherwise it's going to melt everything, and then you're going to fill up the molds. Fill them up all the way to the top, and then you're going to put these in the refrigerator and allow those to set until they are nice and firm. And don't be impatient. Give it a good hour or so because you want to make sure that those are completely set. And these syringes work really well, even for filling up this kind of a thing. They're just not quite as messy as trying to pour it. Okay, so once they're set, we're going to pop these out of the mold. So you're going to kind of just go around and just try to make sure that it's pulling away from the sides. If it looks like it's sticking, they may not be set. Put them back in the fridge. And then I started from the front teeth part and then popped them out. And as you can see, they popped out quite nicely. There were a couple that lost a couple of teeth that stuck to the mold, probably because there wasn't enough cooking spray in there. But for the most part, even those I used because some dentures are broken, right? And there's some missing teeth in there. And here's a whole big plate of dentures that I made. You can see the ones in the center, how it's like one big white band instead of nice individual teeth. Like these ones here are just about perfect. All the teeth are defined and the palate is separate. And now we're going to do the clear part that is going to hold all those dentures. That's 4 cups of cold water. Now the heat's not on yet on the stove. This is a large saucepan. Then I'm going to sprinkle on some unsweetened, unflavored gelatin. This, I use 6 envelopes. The original recipe called for 4. I wanted to make sure that this was going to set up nice and firm so that it came out of the mold properly. So I put a couple extra envelopes of gelatin in there. Let that sit for a few minutes until the water is absorbed by the gelatin and it becomes kind of all jelly-like. Then you'll add in 4 cups of boiling water to that. And between 2 and 3 cups of sugar. I used 2 cups of sugar in mine. It depends how sweet you want it. I thought that 2 cups of sugar was actually perfect amount of sweetness for this. And then you just stir this over medium-low heat until the sugar dissolves and you get a nice clear liquid. Turn the heat off and now we're going to add some flavoring. Now I added 2 teaspoons of citric acid. This gives it kind of like a citrusy flavor. If you don't add some kind of flavor to this, it's going to just be bland sugar. Add whatever kind of flavor you want. Just make sure that the flavoring you add is clear so that it doesn't affect the color of your clear gelatin. I stirred that around and then you're just going to let it sit and come to room temperature off heat. Now you're going to take a large bundt pan or a jelly mold and I lightly sprayed it with some cooking spray. And then I filled it up to about 1/3 using the room temperature liquid. And then you're going to put this in the refrigerator and you let it sit there until it becomes like partly set. So it's not liquid anymore, but it's still very, very soft. And you touch it, it doesn't feel like it's firm at all. It's just like kind of like a very soft jelly. Then you're going to take your dentures that have been in the refrigerator this whole time so they're nice and cold. And then you're just going to arrange them in your bundt pan. Now, as you're arranging, keep in mind that the bottom of this pan that you can see now will actually be the top of the mold when we flip it out and unmold it. So make sure that the teeth part is the part that's going to be visible. And I put them at all different angles and all different directions just to give it kind of like that chaotic kind of a look once it's all put together. So I pushed them all in the gelatin mold all the way around. And the beauty of this is if you don't like it the way it looks, just pull it out and then rearrange it again. The beauty of this particular state that this Jello is in, that it may look like you're breaking it up and you're making marks in it inside the Jello as you're pushing the teeth in. You can see the surface is all disturbed. Well, what's awesome about this is as it hardens, all of those marks will go away and you'll get a nice clear gelatin. So don't worry about moving them around if they're not in a position that you like. So once they're all added in, you're going to add another layer of your room temperature liquid gelatin. And what I did is I filled it up to another 1/3 so that it was almost full for this particular one. Then you're going to put it back in the refrigerator and allow this particular layer to reach that semi-jelly stage. And then you're going to add another layer of dentures to that particular layer. Now, unfortunately for me, my laptop died while I was transferring files from my SD card, and it corrupted the file where I showed where I was putting in the second layer of dentures. So unfortunately, I don't have video of that, but it's the same process. A layer of liquid, let it set to its semi-gelled, and then add more dentures. And then finally, you're going to put your completed creation in the refrigerator and let it sit for several hours or overnight to set completely. Now here we are the next day and it is unmolding time. As you can see, all the different layers of dentures that I added as I filled it up. That is warm water in the sink there. I'm just submerging this mold just long enough so that I started to see it starting to melt a little along the edges, and then I pulled it out. I'm doing this to make the unmolding process faster. And this is actually real time. I didn't edit that part. That's how long I left it in the water. I put a plate on the bottom and then I flipped it over. Make sure your plate is well positioned before you flip. And then the moment of truth, boom, perfect, no tearing, no sticking. I was so happy when this happened. The only thing I wasn't happy about is that it wasn't centered on the plate. And trust me, it was almost impossible to get this thing to move because I didn't want it to tear. So after much jiggling and much tapping, I did manage to move it slightly to closer to the center of the plate. And there it is, the completed beautiful monstrosity. That's what I'm going to call it, a beautiful monstrosity. It is terrifying and disgusting and intriguing and wonderful. All these things apply to this Jello mold. Now this would be spectacular on a Halloween dessert table. Seriously. People aren't going to want to eat it, but you'll have to try to convince them to eat it because it's actually pretty good. Now if you don't want to do a giant Jello mold, you can do little individual ones. So I took a small bowl. With the same method, I put some of the liquid gelatin in the bottom. I let it sit in the refrigerator until it was semi-jellied. And then I added a denture and then I put more Jello on top and then let it set. And I wanted to show you how this slices. And you can see it slices beautifully. And what's awesome and amazing about this is that the denture actually becomes part of the whole mold. So it's not separate. It's actually melded with the clear Jello. So they don't kind of just pop out. I was afraid that once I cut, everything would kind of fall apart in pieces. But it stays as a nice cohesive piece. And then you can just slice it. And it slices so nice. And then you get little bits with teeth and gums in every bite. Isn't that awesome? And I did try it, as you're going to see here. And if it's firm enough, you can use a fork. But of course, you can eat Jello with a spoon. So there's some wonderful teeth, a little bit of gums. Now, obviously, the gum part tastes like strawberry Jello, if that's what you used. The clear part is sweet, and it has a little mild citrusy flavor because of the citric acid. But you know what? It tastes quite good. And if you add a little bit of whipped cream to this, it actually is a fairly decent dessert. And I think people will be impressed. Imagine showing up to a Halloween party with this. I think people would be absolutely thrilled to look at it in a gross, oh my God, I can't believe that you made this kind of a way. Hope you give this one a try. This particular recipe I found on Pinterest, and it was put up there by a guy who has a website called Necronomicon. I'll put a link in the description box to his website. He does a whole bunch of really creepy, gross stuff for Halloween, and he was very inspiring. He says on his website that he didn't invent this Denture Jello. He found it online, but he is one of the first ones to actually come up with the recipe amounts that I have written in my description box. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to take your Denture Jello outside for a nature photo shoot. Here are two more very gross but delicious things that you can make for your Halloween party table. I have this mummy meatloaf head and these deep fried rats.